This is a 2-minute guide to navigating the detours that are impacting on the shared path alongside the Armadale railway line. This episode shows the route going southeast away from the city. We're going to start at Victoria Park Station. There's no detours here yet, but there is a new section of shared path. The works really start on the other side of the Miller Street underpass, and you can expect to see all sorts of interruptions on the shared path past this point. As you might have noticed already, some of the traffic managers love putting out signs that block half the shared path. Try not to crash into any of them. This first detour is actually a Western Power worksite. Just keep in mind that not all the detours are managed by the people doing the work along the railway line. There may be temporary detours like this one popping up on a regular basis. The problem with this detour is that although they started it at a pram ramp, they forgot about providing a ramp at the other end to get you back onto the shared path. Now I could have jumped the curb, but it's tough luck if you're a hand cyclist or you're old and not strong enough to lift your heavy e-bike from the road back onto the path. In that case, you'll have to ride on the road for a considerable distance before you can rejoin the shared path. The major road crossings are as bad as they've always been. Nothing has changed there. There's a new detour around the existing detour just after you cross Welshpool Road. It's not clear where you're supposed to cross the road and get onto the detour marked by the plastic poles because there's no cyclist-specific signage. Yes, that really was a mouthful. It turns out you can get back onto the old detour as soon as you reach the area of flattened poles, so don't continue riding down the road in a confused state like I did. One thing you need to watch out for at some intersections is that with the removal of the boom gates, drivers can now stop on the railway tracks whilst they wait for a green light. Previously, if the traffic lights were red, only one driver per lane could cross the yellow hatch section and any other drivers had to wait on the far side. I've marked those hatched areas in red to make them easier to see. This meant cyclists could cross knowing that drivers weren't going to move forward and run them over. Well, not most of the time. At this intersection, the yellow hatched markings have been painted out with black paint, so drivers can now advance into that section and wait at the lights. You now need to watch for drivers coming from the northeast because there's a good chance they won't stop where they used to and you might get run over. The satellite view is still showing the yellow paint, but in reality some of it is now gone and I don't know if other sections are going to be painted out in the future as well. Just remember that there are 2 lanes of traffic, and just because one driver stops in the usual place for you, it doesn't mean a driver in the other lane will do the same. Try not to get run over because things have changed. A bit further on, we get detoured onto the road again, but this time it's in a temporary bike lane that's been set up with plastic poles. Try not to crash into any signs that might be blocking half the lane. After the next intersection, try not to run into any more signs that might be blocking half the path. The next detour is more sketchy as you'll be riding on the road and not in a temporary bike lane. This is supposed to be a 30km/h section of road, and speed humps have been put down in an attempt to prevent drivers from belting through at dangerous speeds. We'll see how that works out in reality. When you get to the roundabout that's just past the next overbridge, you need to do a version of a Melbourne hook turn to get onto the shared path. Well, that's if you see the small yellow signs that are 10 feet off the ground. Turn left at the orange poles, then turn right and cross the road and get back onto the path. Now, the last intersection is a confusing mess and there are 2 ways to cross. The road at this crossing has 2 lanes in each direction, but depending on the day, it appears that different lanes might be open. On the day of filming, one side of the road was completely blocked and only one lane was open on the other side. Working out where the cars are coming from and what you need to look for is confusing, so you really need to slow down and pay attention here. I almost got clobbered by a site worker who was driving out of a parking spot, so that's something else to watch out for too. When you get past the worksite, don't miss the double line of cones that have been set up to get you back onto the shared path. It's not obvious, and you might miss it like I did. Once you're back on the shared path, try to avoid running into any more signs left on the path. Now I said there were 2 ways to get across this road, and the second is to ride along the road and use what looks like a school crossing, and that's the detour going east.